The day my father dismissed me was the day I decided to destroy him. Not with anger but with success. His words hit like a slap, sharp and cold, bouncing off the polished mahogany walls of his office. "You'll never measure up to your brother," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. I stood there, clutching my business proposal so hard the edges crinkled. Years of late nights, a decade of education, all poured into those pages, reduced to trash in one brutal sentence. My brother Ethan lounged in the corner armchair, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice as Dad shredded my dreams. "I'm Evelyn Carter. For 30 years, I believed I was born to steer Carter Innovations, my father's tech empire. I grew up on a diet of boardroom chatter, market trends over dinner, weekends trailing executives instead of kicking a ball around with friends. Ethan couldn't care less. Always itching to escape, but I thrived on it. Top of my MBA class. Internships at cutting-edge firms, even mastering Mandarin for our Asia push. I'd checked every box. But in that office, none of it mattered. To Dad, I was just a daughter, someone to marry off. Not a leader to trust with his legacy. Dad, just read my proposal," I begged, fighting to keep my voice from cracking. "The market data's solid. Enough." He sliced the air with his hand, shutting me down. "I've made up my mind. Ethan's taking over as COO next month. You should focus on finding a good husband. That's what your mom and I want for you." I glanced at Ethan. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. At 27, he'd barely scraped through business school, more skilled with a 9-iron than a spreadsheet. But he had the one thing I didn't: he was the sun. That familiar sting of being invisible flared in my chest, but this time something snapped. Maybe it was Dad's smug grin when he mentioned a husband, or how he didn't even glance at my work. A quiet fire ignited inside me. I wasn't breaking, I was waking up. "You're right," I said softly, smoothing the crumpled proposal. He looked up, startled by my calm. "I should focus on my future." I set the papers on his desk, turned, and walked out. He chuckled behind me, probably thinking he'd won. He had no clue I'd just declared war. That night, my apartment became a war room. Industry reports, supplier contracts, customer pain points, everything I'd absorbed about Carter Innovations spilled across my dining table. I'd spent years soaking up the business, dismissed as cute by Dad for taking an interest. Now that knowledge was my weapon. My phone buzzed, Mom texting her usual peacemaking line. "Your father means well, honey. He's just protecting you." I powered it off. She'd never defied him, never called out his archaic views. I was done with excuses. The next morning, I strode into Carter Innovations for the last time. Packing my marketing desk, I felt the weight of whispers. News of my humiliation had spread fast in a family firm. "I'm sorry, Evie," murmured Sarah from accounting, her pity stinging worse than Dad's words. "We all know you deserved that job." How many had watched me outwork Ethan, only to see me sidelined for being born female? Ethan appeared in my doorway, awkward as ever. "Hey, Dad says you're taking time off to rethink your priorities." "That's one way to spin it," I shot back, zipping my laptop bag with a sharp tug. "Look, I get you're mad. But maybe this is better. Running a company's stressful." "Save it, Ethan." I cut him off. "You don't even want this, but you'll take it because it's easier than fighting him." He flinched. I'd hit the truth square on. Walking out, box in hand, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I looked lighter. Free. One thought pulsed through me. They don't know what I'm capable of. Leaving the country was an easy call. I'd spent my life chasing Dad's approval, now I'd built something he couldn't touch. I cashed out my trust fund, the one thing he couldn't control, leased an office in Singapore and booked a one-way ticket. Mom freaked out. "How could you abandon us? Your father won't forgive this." But I almost laughed. Forgiveness? I wasn't the one who'd screwed up. Then came the surprise. Grandma, Dad's mom, showed up at my place the night before I left. Tiny but fierce. She shoved an envelope into my hands. "Your grandfather would have been ashamed, not of you, but of what your father's turned into." The company was about innovation, not tradition. Inside were Grandpa's journals, his vision for Carter Innovations scrawled in faded ink. "The future's for the bold," she quoted him. "Show them, Evelyn." Singapore was a whirlwind, coding marathons, pitch meetings, no sleep. I zeroed in on Carter's Achilles heel, their clunky, old-school supply chain. While they leaned on handshakes and paper trails, I built an AI-driven beast predicting demand, streamlining inventory, revolutionizing the game. My team was a ragtag crew of brilliant misfits, crammed into a sweaty office fueled by caffeine and ambition. Every day we inched closer to something unstoppable. 6 months in, a big-shot investor took notice. "This could flip the industry upside down," she said, eyes gleaming. "How fast can you scale?" With her cash, we exploded, turning Carter's weaknesses into our strengths. Their week-long order cycles? We crushed in minutes. Their manual checks? Our automation smoked them. My father's rigid empire had no idea what was coming. 18 months later, NovaTech, my baby, was the industry's darling. We were eating market share alive, and Carter Innovations was bleeding. Reports trickled in. They'd lost 30% in Asia, their stock tanking. Dad's personal touch was a relic in a digital world. Another Carter client jumped to us. My sales had crowed. "Fifth this quarter." The team cheered, oblivious that they were toasting my father's downfall. I kept my poker face on. That night, Ethan texted, "Dad's losing it. Board's pushing him to modernize, but he won't budge. Says he won't bow to some upstart." I smirked at the irony. Dad the bully, now the one cornered. The next day, Carter announced a desperate play, buying startups to claw their way back. "They'll come for us soon," my CFO warned. "We're too big to ignore." She was right. Their offer landed fat, tempting. A golden parachute for my team. "This is our shot to go global," my COO gushed. But I wasn't selling, not yet. "Set up a meeting," I said coolly. "I'll handle it myself." My team blinked. I rarely touched acquisitions, but they trusted me. They didn't know this was personal. The day arrived, tension crackling in our sleek Singapore office. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, a far cry from Dad's stuffy mahogany den. He marched in, advisors in tow, losing his usual arrogance until he saw me at the head of the table. His face went white. "Evelyn." "Hey, Dad," I said, voice like steel. "Sit. We've got business." His team froze as he gaped, piecing it together. "What the hell is this?" he barked. Fury overtaking shock. "No game," I replied, flicking on a screen of NovaTech's stats. "Just business. I built this company. It's the one you're begging to buy." "Impossible," he spat. "You couldn't." "What's impossible?" I interrupted, pulling up charts. "That I created a platform killing your outdated model? Or that I did it without you?" His advisors squirmed as I laid it bare. 40% market share, AI that made Carter obsolete. "You did this to ruin me," he growled. "No," I said, my smile fading. "I did this because you said a woman couldn't run a company. So I built a better one." "Name your price," he snapped. "There isn't one. This is my legacy, the one you wouldn't let me have." He stormed out, red-faced, advisors scrambling behind him. My team stared, stunned. "You're Henry Carter's daughter?" my CFO blurted. "Yeah," I said, turning to them. "But I'm also the CEO taking us global." The fallout was wild. My story hit the press. Tech heiress torches family empire splashed everywhere. Ethan texted, "I always knew you were better. Sorry I didn't say it sooner." Grandma, over tea, beamed with pride. "Your grandfather would have loved this. Innovation over tradition." "You got it." Analysts buzzed about Carter's collapse. Dad was forced to retire, a broken king in his mansion. NovaTech soared, Europe next, new tech rolling out, my team thriving. One night, Dad showed up, humbled. "The board wants you back, to fix Carter." I laughed. "I don't need your company. I've got mine." "You should go," I said, turning away. "I've got investors tomorrow." Months later at our global summit, I took the stage. Innovation isn't tradition, it's courage. I told the crowd, unveiling tech that buried Carter for good. Ethan found me after. Sold my shares. Coaching kids now. I'm happy. We'd both broken free. Him quietly, me loudly. My advice to young dreamers? Don't let anyone set your worth. Prove yourself right. As for Dad, he's still in his study, surrounded by mahogany and regret. Some lessons cost more than empires.